5 divers are exploring an underwater cave 100 meters deep. After swimming for only a short while, one of them gets wedged in a rock crevice and rapidly loses consciousness. A teammate behind, witnessing this, also perishes after a violent struggle. The diver trapped in the middle panics and twists wildly, trying to squeeze past his teammate's corpse. Watching this suffocating scene, the diver at the end of the line has no choice but to abandon his teammates. After swimming back through hundreds of meters of winding tunnels in despair and solitude, he finally reaches the exit. But just when he thinks he is about to escape, he finds the water surface above his head has completely frozen over. And this is the story we are telling today, the Plura Cave diving tragedy. Plura Cave is located in a remote valley in northern Norway. Vast amounts of limestone in the mountains, flushed by the river for hundreds of years, created this deepest and most complex cave system in northern Europe. The deepest underwater point of Plura Cave exceeds 132 meters. A labyrinthine network of tunnels extends for at least 3 kilometers, and connects to another dry cave inside the mountain. Some places are extremely narrow, and the water temperature is freezing. Combined with complicated gas management and long decompression procedures, it demands extremely high psychological stability and technical skills from divers. February 5, 2014. 5 Finnish divers drove to Plura Cave. They were Kai Kankinen, Patrick Grönqvist, Jari Hutarinen, Vesa Rantanen, and Jari Usamaki. All 5 were experienced cave divers, and all held CCR full cave diving certifications. And just last year, it was Kai and Patrick who first discovered the connection between the 2 cave entrances. At that time, they entered from the dry cave and exited from Plura Cave. This traverse experience gave them full confidence. So, a second traverse was planned, a year later. The difference was, this time, the group's goal was to enter from Plura Cave and perform a reverse traverse. Meanwhile, the 5-man team was divided into 2 groups, diving 2 hours apart. The purpose was to minimize the disturbance of silt in the cave and keep the water clear. And the leaders of each group were Kai and Patrick. With the help of underwater scooters, if everything went smoothly, the entire dive would last about 5 hours. However, the river's surface was already frozen. They had to first saw through half a meter of ice to enter Plura Cave, while Patrick and Jari from the first team were sawing the ice surface. The 3 from the second team transported equipment above the dry cave first. By the time they returned to the starting point, a triangular opening had appeared on the ice. According to the plan, Patrick and Jari entered the water first. The water temperature at this time was near freezing. The 2 were also quickly surrounded by darkness, but under the illumination of dive lights, visibility was reasonably clear. They used underwater scooters to increase speed and conserve energy, and both used closed-circuit rebreathers. It allows divers to carry smaller cylinders and stay underwater longer, but it also brings greater risks. If breathing becomes irregular, carbon dioxide poisoning is very likely to occur. Therefore, each member also carried 3 backup cylinders just in case. After a brief descent and ascent, the 2 quickly arrived at an air chamber nearly 250 meters long. This is a massive space partially submerged by water. Here, divers can either swim through, or choose to wade through the cave, and after passing through this air chamber, the passage begins to descend steeply. The tunnels here are narrower and water pressure is extremely high, combined with water temperatures near zero. If a dry suit gets snagged on a rock and punctured, the chance of survival is almost zero. But for the 2 who came prepared, everything seemed to be under control. They finally successfully reached the deepest part of the cave, 132 meters underwater. Then the 2 turned off their scooters and briefly admired the surrounding scenery. The guideline here still had the marker placed by Kai and Patrick last year. Wait for Jari to finish marking with a waterproof pen. 1 hour had passed since they entered the water. The 2 then began a 120-minute decompression ascent procedure. However, when ascending to 112 meters underwater, an accident happened. Patrick, in front, discovered that his companion's light had suddenly disappeared. When he turned back to swim to him, he found Yari's light was wildly bobbing up and down. He was wedged in a narrow spot in the tunnel. Jari signaled Patrick to help him remove a backup cylinder, but even after the cylinder was removed, he still couldn't move. After checking again, Patrick realized where the problem lay. It turned out Yari's scooter was entangled in the guideline. Reasonably, just discarding the scooter at this point would have freed him. But what Patrick didn't expect was that Jari had already fallen into extreme panic. Just as they discarded the scooter and prepared to continue ascending, Yari's breathing became heavier and heavier, more and more irregular. Breathing too fast prevents the body's exhaust gas from being filtered in time. It is highly likely to cause carbon dioxide poisoning. Perhaps Jari also realized something was wrong. He hurriedly signaled Patrick to hand him the mouthpiece of the backup cylinder. After taking a few deep breaths, he seemed to recover slightly, so he switched back to the rebreather. But no one knows if the equipment failed or Yari's judgment became confused. He repeated this switching action 3 times back and forth. Patrick watched helplessly as his teammate went from panic to the mouthpiece falling out, then gradually losing consciousness, and finally choking on water and drowning. And at this moment, he also fell into a dangerous situation, because helping Yari get free, he had stayed at the bottom for a long time. Decompression time had skyrocketed from the initial 2 hours to 7 hours now. As the numbers on the screen kept increasing, Patrick also gradually began to panic. He realized he couldn't let this continue, or he would meet the same end as Yari. He worked hard to regulate his breathing and calm himself down, then began the long ascent process. On the other side, 2 hours after the first group entered the water, the 3 from the second group also dove underwater as planned. Vesa went down first, followed closely by Yari Uzumaki. Kai intentionally brought up the rear to ensure the safety of both at all times. At the beginning, everything went reasonably smoothly, and they reached the air chamber in about 20 minutes. But Kai knew in his heart that this task was not easy, because they carried more backup cylinders than during the first traverse last year. The reason was Vesa insisted on bringing 5 large backup cylinders for safety, although Kai had warned him that more equipment would become a burden instead. To ease Vasa's burden, Kai even actively carried one for him, and facts were as expected. Upon reaching a depth of about 125 meters, the passage suddenly narrowed. Vesa got stuck trying to squeeze through an opening less than a meter wide. In his panic, his fin got entangled in the guideline again. After some struggle, Yari Uzumaki behind him helped Vesa untie his fin, and Vesa also got free from some cylinders. Although successfully freed, precious time had elapsed. For every 5 minutes delayed at this depth, the subsequent decompression stop would extend by about an hour. Biting ice water and the pressure of decompression duration made Vasa's mindset begin to get somewhat irritable. Then the 3 continued down to the deepest part of the cave, and found the marker made by the front team on the guideline. But the next second, Vesa, who was in front, discovered a terrifying sight. He saw the corpse of teammate Yari Hutaranen wedged at the cave mouth, and completely blocking the way. He tried to squeeze past while removing his equipment, while signaling the teammate behind that something was wrong. But Kai, at the end of the line, knew nothing about this. When he caught up, he only saw Yari Uzumaki ahead shaking his body weirdly, and panicky switching breathing apparatus. Kai tried to soothe him and calm him down, but it had no effect. After a moment, Yari Uzumaki stopped moving in front of him. Although Kai was shocked inwardly, he knew at this moment he could only continue forward. Then Kai saw Yari Hutaranen's body, and Vesa struggling violently right next to it, trying to squeeze past. Kai signaled Vesa to turn back, but Vesa dared not turn back, because the way back was longer, and he felt his breathing was already about to get out of control. In Kai's eyes, Vesa at this moment was also quite panicky. Hope of escape seemed very slim. In the deep, cold and dark cave, surrounded by the bodies of 2 teammates, before him was the last companion who might also perish soon. The road ahead was also blocked. At this moment, Kai had to make a difficult decision. He turned back and swam alone, beginning the long and lonely return journey along the same path, and he felt he might not be able to swim out either, because the gas on him was not enough at all to support long decompression. After reflecting, he decided to take a gamble, skip most of the decompression steps and ascend directly. To save gas, he surfaced after reaching the air chamber, and began breathing the air stored inside. Staying here would be enough for days of air supply for him, but it also meant his companions would not get any rescue. Everyone would think they had all been wiped out. After a brief thought, Kai dove back into the water again. However, not long after, the underwater scooter unexpectedly malfunctioned, causing the original less than 20-minute journey from the air chamber to the cave entrance to take Kai fully nearly 50 minutes to reach beneath the water surface. And just when he thought he was about to escape, he found he couldn't find the exit no matter how hard he tried. Turned out because his diving time had lasted 11.5 hours. The hole cut in the morning had long since frozen over again. He found the approximate position by memory, using his last bit of strength to smash through ice about 1 centimeter thick. He finally crawled out of the water surface at 1:30 in the morning. Kai dragged his gear alone toward the van. He started the engine with a tired face for a brief rest. Intuition told him his companions had probably all perished, and while Kai, risking his life, was struggling to swim back, deep in the dark cave, 2 more teammates were completely ignorant of each other in despair. Patrick had been hovering in water near freezing for hours. Seeing that he couldn't wait for the second group of teammates for a long time, he was convinced that all other companions had perished, and almost not far behind him, Vesa was also performing decompression stops. He kept recalling the moment Yari Uzumaki perished, tormented by huge guilt in his heart. At the same time, he wondered why he never saw Patrick. And just when both their physical and mental states were approaching the limit, a turning point appeared. Patrick was at a position about 6 meters from the water. Suddenly saw light illuminating about 12 meters below. He dove down immediately. The 2 finally reunited underwater. Seeing that each other was still alive, gave both huge mental strength, but their ascent speed far exceeded normal levels. Especially Vesa already felt the feeling of pressure in his joints. 9 p.m. Patrick surfaced first. At this point, he had been underwater for 8.5 hours. Soon after, Vesa also surfaced. Vasa's right knee was already intolerably painful after coming ashore. Since strenuous exercise is not advisable after diving, the two stayed in the dry cave for another hour, before getting up and climbing out of this 90-meter deep cave. Immediately after, they called the Norwegian authorities for help. Since Kai's life and death were still unknown, the two, oblivious to rest, returned near Plura Cave again, only to find their van lights were actually still on. Going over for a look, turned out Kai was lying in the van. But the joy of the three was quickly shrouded by the gloom of two companions perishing. After the accident occurred, Norwegian police quickly intervened to investigate. All three survivors, Patrick, Kai, and Vesa, were questioned. At that time, Vesa was still receiving treatment in the hospital due to severe decompression sickness. But how to recover the bodies of the victims became a problem before everyone. To this end, the police called in 3 experienced British cave divers. However, after the 3 dove from the dry cave entrance, found the risk of moving the bodies was extremely high, and the task was forced to abort. Thereafter, the official decision was to keep the 2 bodies permanently within the cave, and sealed the entire Plura Cave system. To the outside world, this incident seemed to be settled as a final conclusion, but for the 3 surviving teammates, it was the beginning of another torment. Helplessness and guilt shrouded their hearts at all times. Kai developed severe anxiety and never dove again since then. Vesa also endured painful decompression sickness sequelae at all times. Therefore, when Patrick asked if they were willing to personally bring back their teammates, what he got were all affirmative answers. Then a secretly planned recovery operation thus unfolded. The 3 assembled a team of 17 people, and they were all top experts in the field of cave diving. In addition, the equipment transported into the cave alone weighed as much as 1,100 kilograms. 50 cylinders were placed on both sides of the cave. There were 26 cylinders on the dry cave side. 24 were placed on the Plura Cave side, respectively at positions of water depth 6m, 21m, 56m, 75m, 90m, and 100m. The rescuers were divided into 2 groups. One group entered from the Plura side first, after freeing the victims. The second group of support divers entering afterward then escorted the bodies above the dry cave, so that the first group of team members could complete the decompression procedure. To prevent accidents in the first group, they also placed a decompression chamber in advance on the Plura Cave side, allowed divers to leave cold waters and perform safer decompression. March 24, 2014 at 11 a.m., operation formally began. The first rescue team spent about 50 minutes, reached Yari Usamaki's perishing position from the Plura Cave entrance. After successfully freeing Yari Usamaki's body, support divers secured it to the scooter and towed it back to the dry cave exit in a relay. March 25. Yari Hutarinen's body was also successfully escorted out. Then after removing all equipment such as cylinders within the cave, the entire recovery operation declared successfully complete. Personnel present held simple mourning for the victims, then reported to police, and transferred the filmed underwater footage and relevant equipment to police.
Hello, is this Björna?
Yes.
Well, we have recovered the bodies up. We have been running a project for 5 days and the bodies are now up in the Steinuglet dry cave.
Both of the bodies?
Both of the bodies, yes.
Okay.
We took also one of the scooters of the victims, one wrist computer and one tank with us up. So we have those for you, and then we have a video from the recovery, so we want to give them to you.
Okay. So you have taken both body up?
Yes, we have.
Although this recovery belonged to rule violation operation, but the divers were not pursued. Later this recovery incident was also made into a documentary, Diving into the Unknown. They gambled everything, using the most dangerous and unallowed method, completed a pure redemption only for inner peace.